Kate said Adam Nasim Zoman. So something called Adam Zoman. They're called the conspiring witnesses. They lied, but there are different kinds of witnesses that lie. These witnesses, we'll see more details, but they're called conspiring witnesses. They go and they testify about somebody, and then two other witnesses come and say that you couldn't have been there at so and so time. You were with us at that time. So the halacha is that these Adam Zoman, they get, like the Torah says, is ka'asher zamam. They get what they tried to conspire to do to somebody else. They get that punishment. So the Mishnah gives an example. What is Adam Zoman? And it's going to give two examples of what is not Adam Zoman. And the Gemara is going to pick up on that. Case of Adam Nasim Zoman. What's a case of Adam witnesses that become conspiring witnesses? So the rule is that if a Kohen marries a divorcee and they have a child, that child is called a Kollel, and he is invalid for certain services that a Kohen is usually permitted to do. Or a ben chalutza, we know that chalitza, so a husband dies, and the brother-in-law, instead of doing yibum, marrying her, they do the shoe ceremony. So that's called chalitza. So same thing. The ben chalutza is also, at least rabbinically, invalid, as opposed to the grusha, which is biblically invalid for certain services that a Kohen is usually allowed to do. So now you have witnesses that come and testify that we saw this guy divorce his wife before this kid was born, and then he ends up, and then this person who divorced his wife before the kid was born. This kid is the son of a divorcee. We saw the divorce, or we saw the chalitza, we saw the shoe ceremony. So now two other witnesses come and say you couldn't have seen them get divorced. The day you're claiming that you saw that, you're with us across the country, impossible. So what happens to them? So usually you get what you tried to give. So what happens over here? Ein omrim. We don't say yas ben grusha ben chalutza. We don't make the witnesses now have a status of a chalal, of a kohen who's invalid. Rather, what happens? You get 40 lashes. Now, where in the world do we get from getting what you tried to give to 40 lashes? That the Gemara is going to talk about. But the 40 minus 1. But rather you get lashes.
Even if the Eidim Zoman were Kohanim.
Yeah, even if the Eidim Zoman were not Kohanim, then there's no novelty in the Mishnah, because that's obvious. So it's only if the Eidim Zoman were Kohanim. Yeah, very good, thank you. So we know if someone kills somebody inadvertently, they go to exile. So now someone testifies that Reuven killed Shimon inadvertently, and two witnesses come and say, you guys weren't there. You guys were with us. So maybe you would think you should give them exile also. At the end of the day, the Mishnah says, no, we don't give them exile. Rather, rather you give 40 lashes. Okay. So says the Gemara on the technical part of the Mishnah. You gave me, you're starting a Masechta about what is the case of Adam Zoman, and yet you're telling me two cases that are not Adam Zoman, right? Speaking backwards. So it should have said, added the word ain, that these are not Adam Zoman. The ode, another question, midikatani lekaman, as it says coming up, it says in the Mishnah on Hamid Aleph that a case of where they are Adam Zoman. So we already know that from the next Mishnah. That Mishnah said on that day, you were with us in so-and-so place. You could not have testified. That's a case of Adam Zoman. What's our Mishnah doing? If it's telling you Adam Zoman is speaking backwards. If it's telling what Adam Zoman is, we know that already. So, like this. So, Tana Hasimkai, our Mishnah is following the end of Sanhedrin. Now, if you look in the Mishnahs, there's a dispute. What exactly is the last chapter of Sanhedrin? So we know, we just finished yesterday. The last chapter is Parak Chelek. However, some Rishonim did not put that chapter at the end. They put the chapter as the second to last chapter. And they put the second to last chapter as the last chapter. So either our Gemara is going like those Rishonim, because it says we're following what we ended off Sanhedrin with, which was everybody who's an Eid Zomim gets that death penalty, or that that penalty that they tried to give somebody else, except for chutz mizome bas kohen ubol. This we saw many times on Sanhedrin, except for the Bas Kohen that commits adultery, she gets burnt. And when if the Edom Zoman come and they testify that she committed adultery and they're found to be false witnesses, they do not get sreifa. They do not get sreifa. Them and the one that she had relations with, so they're going to get his death penalty, which is going to be strangulation. So the end of Sanhedrin either means the last chapter according to those versions, or it means the second to last chapter, but it's still the end of the halachic part of Sanhedrin. So was talking about this idea of Edom Zoman. So those two cases of Abbas Cohen, who bola she'ein makdim lo misa, they're not going to get that punishment that they tried to give somebody else. They're not going to get sreifa. They're not going to get burnt. Rather, ela lemisa acheres, they're going to get a different death penalty. They're going to get strangulation. So now comes our Mishnah, the yesh Edom Zoman acherim she'ein osin badin azama. There's another group of witnesses which don't get the regular penalty that a conspiring witness gets. She'ein osin b'em din azama kol iker, ela malchus arbayim. So that rather they get lashes. So that's the background before you open up Makkos Daf Beis. Now with that background, now the Mishnah makes sense because we're giving you cases where you don't get the regular, another case of where you get the irregular punishment for being a conspiring witness. What's that? Our Mishnah. Kate said, people say that people testify that he was a divorcee, that this lady married a divorcee, had a child, and the child is invalid to serve in the Beit HaMikdash. Or our Mishnah is a ben chalutza. This Kohen married somebody who's a chalutza who already had this ceremony with the shoe, and the kid is a rabbinic chalal. He's rabbinically prohibited from serving the Beit HaMikdash. So ein orim yasis ben grusha ben chalutza. We don't say that you become a ben grusha ben chalutza. Takla ela lokes arbayim. So at the end of the day, if you notice, we only answer the second question of the Gemara. We didn't really answer the first question. The first question was it should say Kate said ein Edom nas zoman. So that
it sort of did. I mean, this is coming. If
right.
You flipped it to Mishnayos, you wouldn't have the continuation the way they just explained it.
Right. So you have to add in the ein in the background context, and then it'll read.
I think it's any other mistake first back to the previous one.
Does Sota, I think. It asks. Yeah. Okay. So now Minan Emili, what's the source of this? How do you know? Meaning maybe that sounds like that every time the Torah says you should get what you gave, you should get what you gave. Even so, if the witnesses were a Kohen and they came and the Kohen was found to be a conspiring witnesses, without a scriptural source, you would make him to a chalal. You would invalidate him in the Beis HaMikdash. You need a pasuk to tell you that we don't do such a thing. So Minan Emili Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi the Amar Kra the Asisem Lo Kasher Zamam. So the Torah said you should make him Asisem Lo Kasher, make for him, do for him what he tried to do for somebody else. So it says the Gemara, Lo only to him, below Lazaro. So you can only do to him and not to his children. So so you can only do to him and not to his children. Here you're making the child into here when you testified you were trying to make the child into a chalal, and we can only give you what you tried to give. So since you tried to give the child the status of an invalid Kohen, then we'd have to, then that's not going to be a fulfillment of giving you the status of an invalid Kohen, because you tried to give a child that status and you're not a child. So says the Gemara, okay, so make yourself an invalid Kohen. But why don't we make him an invalid Kohen? Below Lizare. Just make him invalid and don't invalidate his children. That should also be a fulfillment of Kasher Zamam. Says the Gemara, no. Ta'inan Kasher Zamam Lasos Veleka. We have to give to you what you tried to give. And since you tried to make the child a chalal, we can't replace that with making you a chalal. That would not be a fulfillment of giving you what you tried to give somebody else. Yeah. 1 second. Sorry. Rashi says that the Gemara said, "Asisim lo kasher zamim lo below lizaro." So you can only make the person a the one you're testifying against a chalal. In this case, you would make his children forever. I mean, at some point you would make them all invalid, and that would not be what the Torah said. I see some low kasher, some low below Lazaro, him and not his children. That was the first attempt of the Gemara. Okay, so at the end of the day, this is not going to be. This would be a source of why, once again, a witness who's a Kohen who testifies falsely, we don't make him into a chalal. First of all, because you have to give to him what he tried to give to him and not to his children. So, and furthermore, we can't give it to him because that's not what he tried to give. He tried to make the child the chalal and not and therefore we're not going to make him.
And the issue is not that we don't hold him a riot. If they testified that he was boiled somebody that was like us, or we still, and that was
right.
Still kill him.
Right. Specifically a chalal, yeah. Right. Something which might cause you to be invalid, right? That's right. Right.
Again, what's the difference if he's saying this as a ben grusa, that makes him a halal. If it would end up being true, it would make him a halal and his children will also be a halal.
Not him, only the children. Halal is only did in the children. The Kohen himself is not invalid. Is the Kohen's child invalid?
So he would be able to work in the basis of as a ben grusa?
Yeah. No, the child can't work. But they're testifying about
Oh, they're testifying about the woman.
The boy's mother.
They say the husband divorced. We're saying that the husband divorced this lady. The husband, the Kohen, married a divorcee. So they're testifying that the husband married a divorcee. Therefore, the child is a chalal.
They're testifying that who Isha who ben grusa, saying he's a ben grusa. That's talking about that his mother.
Maybe they're testifying they saw the mother get a divorce.
Right. Shehu ben grusha b'fanenu in his garsha. We saw her get a divorce. 1 second. Right, so it could be right. You're testifying on the ben grusha. How you testifying he's a chalal? You're testifying we saw his father marry a divorce. This father, he got divorced in front of us. Meaning he got divorced in front of us, right? And then, so that caused the kid to become a chalal. So the Gemara said, but you can only make him. I see some low kashem, low below Lazaro. So if you're testifying about a kid who's a chalal, so then making you a chalal is not a fulfillment of kasher. Because I see some low kashem and below Lazaro and not your children. We don't give your children the punishment that you tried to give.
But Rashi says the aidus that they're giving us, we saw the mother get a divorce.
Well, yeah, how else do you say the kid's a chalal?
Right, but that one.
Right. Right. So once again, I see some low kasher zamam, low below Lazaro. You, the conspiring witness, you get like what you tried to give, but not your children. So since you're testifying about a kid who's a chalal, we're not going to make your kid a chalal. We're not going to make your kid a chalal because we're only going to make you what you tried to give. So that's on that the Gemara says, okay, why don't you why don't you just invalidate him and not his children? So basically, if you'd invalidate him, it would mean you invalidate him and his children. Right. And that the Gemara says, no, low below Lazaro, him and not his children. So says the Gemara, so why don't you just invalidate him and not his children? Says the Gemara, no, if you invalidate him and not his children, that's not kasher zaman, because by making someone into a chalal, you're invalidating him and the person's children. The chalal's children will also be halal. So you can't invalidate his children, low below Lazaro. You can't only do halvesies, do him and not his children, because that's not kasher zaman. So that's why you're unable to. That's why you're going to get 40. You'll get Makkos. Says Bar Pada. Sounds like, I don't know, he's not happy with this with this pasuk. He learns it differently. Maybe the word low is not extra. He says kal v'chomer. He likes that kal v'chomer. Umaha mechalel eino mischalel. So the mechalel, the one who goes and marries the divorce, he's not supposed to. So he himself is eino mischalel. So he himself was the mechalel, and yet he's eino mischalel. Habolachalel v'lo chilel. This witness that tried to invalidate, he tried to profane someone else and didn't succeed. Eino din shelo yischalel. The guy himself who did something improper does not become a chalal. does not become invalid. Rather, only his children. The guy who tried to invalidate for sure should not become invalid. So that's why you can't make him into a chalal. Okay. Maskef la Ravina. On this kal v'chomer we just said, Ravina has a question. He said, Im Kain, if you go with this kal v'chomer, that the Adam Zoman can never be better than the person they're testifying against, so then batalta Torah's Adam Zoman, you've totally nullified Adam Zoman. Why? Uma hasokel eno niskal. So the way Rashi learns is Uma hasokel eno niskal. So let's say you have the rule is by Adam Zoman, you only get kasher zomim if they haven't tried the guy yet. If he's already been tried and sentenced, and then you're found to be Adam Zoman, so then you do not get kasher zomim. So Uma hasokel eno niskal, witnesses who come and testify about somebody, and they give the guy the death penalty. They've already sentenced him and brought him out to be stoned. They themselves don't get kasher zomim. So Uma hasokel eno niskal. So now habal liskal v'lo sakel eno din shlo yisakel. So now the ones who actually testified about somebody who got killed, they themselves will not get stoned now that they're found to be conspiring witnesses. But
this is rhetorical.
We're asking on this kal v'chomer, if your kal v'chomer is true, that you can never be better than the people that are actually fulfilling the testimony, it actually goes with them. So then, one who tries to stone somebody but doesn't succeed, he for sure should not get stoned. And we know that's not true. The whole Adam Zolim is, that's the whole chiddush, that's the whole novelty of the Torah is, you try to get the guy the death penalty, so we are going to be more strict with you than the other guy. The other guy is innocent. You tried to get him stoned. He's innocent. But you, Adam Zoman, tells you that you are going to get stoned. So according to this, we don't like the kal v'chomer. Rather, it's like the first opinion says that it's really a pasuk. Some low kasher zamam, low below lazaro. A chalal would have implications for your children. But if it's for your children, the Torah says low. You get what you tried to give. The child doesn't get punished for what you tried to give to somebody else. And we can't only give you and not the child because that wouldn't be kasher zamam. Either way, you have no choice. So it must be you're going to get malchus.
He knows obviously. Right.
What's for the kal v'chomer?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, Levi Yaakov was also bothered with this question. Yeah, what's that mean? It's a great question. Yeah, so let's see. Minani Mili. Okay, so what is the source of the second novelty in our Mishnah? That someone who goes to exile, if someone's saying witnesses come and say this guy Reuben killed Shimon b'shogeg inadvertently, and now they come and they say, hey, you witnesses were with us in New York, you weren't in LA. So now they tried to give somebody gullus, tried to give someone exile, and did not succeed. We don't give them exile. Why not? That's just the Mishnah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know how he was going on which part?
The case of gullus.
Okay.
Yeah. Amrei Shlakish Damar Kra. Hu Yanus El Achas Ha'arim. Hu Velo Zomen. The novelty of allowing the murderer to go to a city of refuge is only who and not the Zoman and not anybody else. So therefore, we're not going to let the Adam Zoman, we're not going to give them gullus either. Rabbi Yochanan Omer Kal v'chomer. Umahu sha'asa maisa b'mezid eino gola. So now, someone who doesn't act advertently, let's say without witnesses, right? But he does it b'mezid. He does not get to go to gullus. He's eino gola. Hein shelo asu maisa b'mezid. They who didn't do an act b'mezid. An act b'mezid means here they only spoke. Of course, they did it advertently. They're lying witnesses. They're conspiring witnesses. But it's only a dibur ba'alma, Rashi says. Eino din shel yigu. So the guy that actually did the act, it's very serious. He did an advertent act and killed somebody, does not get gullus. And yet these people that merely just spoke, so for sure they shouldn't get gullus. Yeah. Now, says the Gemara, hold on. V'hino senis, like that logic should dictate something else. For example, you know why he doesn't get gullus? The reason why a guy who kills advertently doesn't get exiled, because it's not enough of a kapara. Exile is a kapara, it's an atonement. A guy who kills advertently has more coming to him. The city of refuge, Galus, is not going to atone for him. So, you know why? It's not an atonement for him. But Hain, Nami Liglu, they should get Galus. They should go to exile. So your Kal V'chomer really is gonna go the opposite way. Really, it should be a reason why they should get Galus. Rather, we're gonna say, like Reish Lakish, that it's really a verse. So two Gemaras, two attempted Kal V'chomers, each rejected it. Each Kal V'chomer, you have to know, they knew the rebuttal, and yet they still said the Kal V'chomer. How do you understand that? Good question. Amar Ula. Now, this idea that you get lashes instead of getting what you tried to give, where does that come from? You know, maybe you should have jumping jacks. I'm like, well, where's that come from? The Torah says kasher zamam. If you can't do it, so you can't do it. So then you can't do it. Okay, like everything else. But yet you get lashed. Amar Ula remez le'edim zomim and Torah minayim. So it sounds like first the Gemara understands. Where is there a hint to the concept of conspiring witnesses in the Torah? Says the Gemara. Remez a hint le'edim zomim v'haksiv. It's an explicit verse. V'asisam lo kasher zamim. It says you should get what you tried to give. Ella remez le'edim zomin shalokim and Torah minayim. How do you know? Where is there a hint, a remez, that they're going to get Malkus? The reason why it's going to be a remez, because we're about to quote a verse that literally is not going to say anything about Edim Zomin. But when we try to understand the verse, we're going to realize it's very hard, it's very difficult to be understood in one way. So it must be talking about witnesses, and therefore it refers to it as a remez. So here's the verse. Also was the first Mishnah in Sahedrin quoted this verse, I believe, at the end. So, Minayin, Dichsiv, like this. Vehitzdiko as a tzaddik. So somebody, what's the word to make somebody innocent? Exonerate, absolve, good. So you have someone who exonerates the innocent, Vehirshiju as a Rasha, and vindicates, convicts the Rasha, the evil one. So you have someone who, okay. What happens to the person who makes the innocent and makes the guilty? The next verse, V'haya im Hakos a Rasha. Sounds like he will get Malkus. You'll always get lashes. Says the Gemara, Mishum v'hitzdiku as a tzaddik v'shiyos a Rasha, v'haya bin Hakos a Rasha. Every time someone's innocent and someone's guilty, the result is lashes. I mean, that's not true. Depends on the case. Not every case of guilt and innocent is a case of lashes. So what does the verse mean? Someone who makes the tzaddik innocent and
the person who made a claim
the guy who's now guilty. In the event that Reuben did something to Shimon, no, Shimon did something to Reuben, they're fighting. Okay, Reuben's innocent, Shimon's guilty. Next thing you know, Malkus. Not true. It depends on the case. What's the case? Not every case is Malkus. So Mishum it's Digas Atay, which is a Russia, Vayam Mikas Russia. Could that really be? So yeah. Yeah, Rashi goes through a whole thing about why, if the Torah is talking about the judges themselves, so then there's a much simpler way to state what it wants to say. Yeah, like there's a long Rashi. Okay, so Ella, what it must be, Eidim Shehir Shiu as a tzaddik. We're talking about not the judges that absolved or that convicted somebody. We're talking about witnesses. So witnesses Shehir Shiu as a tzaddik. So now witnesses here Shehir Shiu as a tzaddik. And now the Asu Eidim Acharini, another set of witnesses comes, the Hitzdiku as a tzaddik. So now when you read the verse, you have the verse starts also in the content with a background to it. The background to this pasuk is witnesses came and tried to make the innocent guilty. Comes, the Torah tells you, the Hitzdiku as a tzaddik. Two other witnesses come and they actually are making the innocent remain innocent and not guilty. So the Hitzdiku as a tzaddik, the Mikara, like he was originally before this whole thing fell into his lap. He was innocent. He was innocent in the beginning. So now v'shavinu lahani rishayim, you make these conspiring witnesses rishayim. They're rishayim. So then v'haya im ben hakos harasha. So yeah.
I know she's not a hakosha. First two says he's innocent, the next two say he's guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the evidence in the pasuk that it was on it?
Because if you were Eidei Hakasha, we wouldn't call you a Rasha. Should make a sweatshirt.
If you're referring to Adam.
What? If you're into Adam, then you wouldn't be a Russia. It's just 2 and 2 and you throw it out. So the case of the Russia must be the Eid Zomim. He's the Russia. So and this is the hint. This is the hint that there's such a case where you're going to have lash. Now, it doesn't tell you explicitly here that it's talking about Ben Grusha or Ben Chalutza, right? That part doesn't say. It's showing you that there's a hint to such an idea by learning the Torah a little bit in a different context. So,
right, because according to that would mean that every time there's Adam Zomi, they should always get left.
Right. So obviously, right. So, right. Exactly. So even in the remez, it's not going to always hold true because it's only specific cases. Right. Yeah. Very good. Kol zeh nichlal in the remez. Everything's all included, and probably the idea that it's a remez. Now, says the Gemara, "V'teipuk 10 commandments." So Milo Sana says that you cannot lie. You cannot lie in court. A witness can't lie. So what happens from a lo sana? It's a lav. It's a negative prohibition. Negative prohibition. You should get lashes. So that sounds like you should always get lashes for every time Adam Zomin. Oh, however, we know that at the law which talks about muzzling your ox, lo saksum shor b'disho, is the quintessential negative commandment, which many rules are learned out from there. One of the rules is you have to do an act. If you do a negative commandment, that's not a maisa, that's not an act. So that's called, it's a lav she'ein b'maisa. And the rule is, the kol lav she'ein b'maisa, ein lo kana lav. Every lav that doesn't have an action, you won't get malchus. Obviously, this is an exception to the rule. This you're speaking and you do. This you did violate losana, and you still do get malchus, right?
So what is it trying to show?
You should have gotten malchus from losana. That should be a source. Why do you have to have a remez with Adam Torah and the whole remez over here?
We said that you don't get last.
Oh, so we reject it. Losana is not the place. You can't learn only from there. If you only had losana, you wouldn't get lashes because it's only a lav shein b'maisa. But the remez Adam Zomin in Torah Minayin is a specific verse which we learned refers to the witnesses, and there it says v'haya im hakos arasha. So, okay, there's 2 ways to learn now. Either v'haya im hakos arasha is a revelation that losana is going to be different than a regular, it's a gilui milsa on losana. Losana alone would never tell you that you get lashes. But Ibn Hakos Rasha is megala to you that losana is an exception to the rule. That's one way to learn. Or no, the Ibn Hakos Rasha it itself is the source that you get lashes. I think what to say about it. Taner Rabbanan. Arba dvarim nemru be'edim zomin. Happy to chazer over again. Yeah. Taner Rabbanan. Arba dvarim nemru be'edim zomin. So there are 4 things stated about Adam Zomin, about conspiring witnesses. Ein nasin ben grusha ben chalutza. So first of all, our Mishnah, you do not make conspiring witnesses to that their children will have a status, or they themselves have a status of a chalal, someone who's invalid to serve. That's 1. The ein goal of the ari mikla. 2, you can't get exile. We won't give, like our Mishnah says, that we won't give them exile. Now, 2 to 3 new cases. The ein mishalmin es hakofer. We're going to see more about this. We don't make them pay kofer. So when the ox gores someone else's ox, so there it says in kofer yushas alav, you pay kofer. Kofer, you're paying a redemption for your soul. So there's a machlokus. Is kofer considered regular money? You're just paying the regular restitution, or it's money of atonement. So that we'll see in a second. The einim karim be'avid ivri. If you go and testify about somebody who stole, and now the guy can't pay back, so what happens to him? He gets sold into slavery. He becomes an avid, a servant of somebody. So maybe we should also make you into a servant. The Gemara's going to talk about this at the bottom of the Umud. That we don't do either. That's 4 cases. Rabbi Akiva says a 5th case. Omer af ein mishalmin alpi atzmun. There's something called a mod beknas. When you walk into according to Rashi, it's a very interesting case. You walk into a place and you're found to be an Eid Zomim, but they haven't finalized the verdict yet. They haven't your plaintiff hasn't taken you to court to finalize and take the money from you. And then you walk into another court and say, by the way, I'm the Eid Zomim. So that's called Mod B'Knas. You're admitting to something wrong. The rule is by Mod B'Knas, when you're admitting to what you did wrong, you're going to be exempt in certain circumstances that we'll also see more about. So if an Eid Zomim does that, then we don't make him pay. Ein mishalman al pi atzmo. So you come and say, by the way, I'm the conspiring witness to try to get him lashes. So we don't go give you lashes. Okay, now let's go one by one. Ein nasin ben grusha ben chalutza kida amran. You don't become a ben grusha ben chalutza that we just said. That's our Mishnah. Ein gol nari miklat kida amran. That we also just said. You don't become you don't get exiled. That's our Mishnah. The ein mishalman es a kofer. Oh, so now you're paying. So the ox, Reuben's ox, gores Shimon's ox. Right, we're talking about the wild ox, a shor muad. So now you could pay you. So two witnesses come and they testify. Reuben's ox gored somebody. They gored a person. They killed a person. Reuben's ox killed Shimon. Now they're found to be Adam Zoman. They found to be conspiring witnesses. So now, what would happen if they would be right? They would mechayev, they would obligate the owner of the ox to pay kofer, to pay kofer. Now, either the word kofer, it's referring to restitution. You have to just pay what you damaged. If that would be true, and there's no reason why a conspiring witness shouldn't pay. However, there's another opinion that says that kofer here is really an atonement. You're paying as an atonement. If that's true, you don't make the Adam Zoman pay for an atonement because they have nothing, they didn't do that act. The same way, if let's say you're mechayev someone a chatas, a korban, and you're found to be an Adam Zoman, would you have to bring a korban too? A korban chatas? So, no, because a chatas is an atonement. So I'm nothing to atone for. So yes, you technically were mechayev them, you obligated them to pay money, but the money is an atonement. So you don't have an atonement for your ox. Your ox didn't kill.
If they testified truthfully that someone was Mechalot Shabbos, they still wouldn't bring a contract unless they felt they wanted like they have to feel it.
What do you mean?
Reuben says, I saw Shimon,
Violate Shabbos.
Accidentally violate Shabbos, right?
Okay.
He can't be chayav a chatas unless he himself wants it. He has to say, like, I want the.
But even so, Eid Zom is not a case of kares. Chad only for kares. Yeah, I mean, technically, you wouldn't bring a chatas either. I'm assuming. Whatever. Yeah, but the idea that you only get atonement for the aver you did, you didn't do this aver that gets atonement. Your ox didn't kill. So now, the honey lav b'nei kaparin, these are not people that are deserving of atonement for the act of their ox killing, because their ox didn't kill. So, presumably these people would get lashes also, I'm assuming. If you don't pay kapara, what happens to you? I don't know. Presumably you get lashes. So now, just parenthetically, once we mention this idea that there's somebody who holds that paying kofer, restitution, is really paying, not restitution, paying as an atonement. So now, Amar of Chisda. So who's that opinion? Amar of Chisda, Rabbi Shmuel. It's Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Benosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Brokahi. Where do we find that Rabbi Shmuel said such a statement? The Tanya of Benosan Pidyon Nafsho. You go and give the redemption of your soul. So now, how do you pay? So the first opinion is Demei Nizik. You pay. So there's a Nizik and a Mazik. A Nizik is the one that was damaged, and the Mazik is the one that damaged. He's the damager. So Benosan Pidyon Nafsho says you pay the redemption of your soul. How much do you pay? So the first opinion is you pay Demei Nizik. So how much did the animal cost? Let's say the animal costs $500. You have to now pay $500. Says, that's the first opinion. Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Brokahi says, Demei Mazik, you pay according to the ox that damaged. You don't pay according to the ox that was damaged. Rather, the ox that damaged. So, yeah, how you judge it, if it costs less, if it costs more, whole to do. So now, says the Gemara, what do these two opinions argue? Is this not, this machlokes is kofer, is the what you pay, is it restitution or is it atonement? If it's restitution, so of course you pay after what you damaged. You damage a window, you damage the ox, you pay, you cause the owners $500 of damage, you have to go and fill in that void and pay $500. That would be the first opinion, that's the main nizik. The opinion that holds the main mazik, you're paying for your own soul. So you're going to go according to how much your animal cost, however they calculate it. So isn't that this machlokes is kofer kapara or is kofer mamona? Ma'ila bakamiflagi, the marasar kofer mamona, marasar kofer kapara. So there we found this opinion of Rabbi Shmuel that holds that kofer is an atonement, and therefore that's the case. Or if you have conspiring witnesses, then they are not going to be able to pay what they tried to give somebody else. So says Rav Papa, not so fast. Who says to learn the machlokas in that way? Learn it like this. Amar Rav Papa, look, the kule alma kufar kapara. Not only Rabbi Shmuel, everyone agrees kufar kapara. If everyone agrees kufar kapara, that the kufar you pay is an atonement, why do you calculate after the damagee, the animal that was damaged? Shouldn't you always go after the mazik, the damager, and however much his animal cost, he has to pay as an atonement for his own soul? The miflagi mar savar b'din nizak. Yeah, and they argue like this: mar savar b'din nizak sheminan. They have a technical machlokas. He says you calculate your atonement after the animal that was damaged, and you calculate according to the mazik, according to your animal. It's just a technical way how to calculate. Says the Gemara, hold on. Meaning the Gemara understands, it sounds like, that really the nizak, if you go after the damaged animal, that's a more understandable of being an atonement. So says the Gemara, jumps on the Rabbanan. Why should you go after the nizak and not the mazik? If you're atoning for your own soul, you should go after the mazik, after you, not after the animal that was damaged. Says the Gemara, sounds like you're right in svara logically, but nemar hashta, it says here hashta, nemar hashta, it says the Bach adds in hashta lamala, but nemar hashta lamata. It says the word hashta up here, and it says the word hashta down there in a different context, referring to somebody who damages a woman, a pregnant woman, and causes her to miscarry. So he has to pay now. He has to pay for the vlados, for the fetuses. So malahalan b'denizak, just like over there, you calculate according to the fetuses how much they would be worth. Afkan b'denizak. So the first opinion learns it from the word hashta. It says hashta over there, hashta over here. So therefore, we go after the animal that was damaged, and that's how we calculate your atonement of your soul. Rabbi Shmuel says, what do you mean? B'nasan pidyon nafshoksiv. You give according to the rest, according to your own redeeming your soul. So it's yours. So you go according to your animal, not according to someone else's. So what do the Rabbanan do with that? They said, you're right. Pidyon nafshoksiv. However, the fact that it's going after your soul, they didn't think was convincing enough to go after your animal that damaged and not after the other animal that was damaged.
Maybe this word again.
Rabbi Shmuel, v'nasan pidyon nafshem ksiv. It says that's pidyon nafshem ksiv. So the Rabbanan, what do? Question mark. You're right. Pidyon nafshem ksiv. You're right. It does say pidyon nafshem, but that's not a reason why I should give after mazik. Mihu, rather, kishaymina, when we evaluate, we go after the nizik.
Because nafsho could be going on either party. Nafsho doesn't say which party is going. Nafsho would be.
Right. The first opinion thought it was more.
This means his nefesh. Whose nefesh?
Pidyon nafsho. Rasha the no saying as a kofer. You the nafsho. You have to give. You have to give. Yeah. But listen, at the end of the day, the other opinion has to use the gzeira shava. Right? I guess because the word nafsho it has implication. It doesn't sound like it's muchach one way or the other.
What caused the woman's miscarriage? Is it called that kofer? This sounds like straight damage. It's the cost of what you did.
I don't know if it calls it kofer.
You have to consider it kofer for this to be a valid analogy.
Why even gzeira shava? You think?
Well, you have to think that's not just paying for the damage or for loss. It's a cost. Otherwise, why are we talking about?
Because it's in the same parsha. It sounds like the gzeira shava is learning. Yeah. Good question. It doesn't sound like over there would be kofar. It sounds like it's regular damage. Yeah. Good point. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, this case is interesting. The ainim karin be'evid ivri. The ainim karin be'evid ivri. So it's a little bit funny case. You testify that somebody stole, and now that they stole, so you're found to be a false witness. So the result of them stealing, if they can't pay back, is going to be sold to be a servant to somebody else.
You mean the domain can't pay back? Right? He said
Reuben,
you paid $500.
me and you testify that somebody stole.
Yeah.
And that guy now can't pay back. So what would happen as a result of our testimony?
It's not about the domain not being able
So 1 second. So he would be sold into as an Evet. Now you and I are found to be Adam Zoman. So maybe we should also be sold into slavery. That we say no. We don't get sold into slavery. Even though the result, it's just a funny thing because you're not testifying that someone else should be sold into slavery. You're testifying that he stole. Now, if he stole and he can't pay back, then right, so it's interesting. It's an interesting case. It's a little bit. Every case of ours, like you're testifying directly on the act, but here you're not testifying. Pashas, you're not testifying that he should be sold. You're testifying that he stole. Stealing doesn't get you sold into slavery. Stealing without paying back, so it's such a derivative. It seems very far removed. Yeah. So okay. So Einim Karm B'Avid. So now Rav Hamnuna says not true only in a certain case at first. Sav Rav Hamnuna lemay mar to say hani mili heichad islay lididei. Only when he, the Eved, has money. Then, if witnesses testify, then they're not going to get sold into slavery. So, right, obviously, Demigu de Ihu lon is davin, and Hunami lon is davinu. Well, since he himself is not going to get sold into slavery because he has money to pay back, they also will not get sold into slavery because they didn't cause him to get sold into slavery because he has money in his bank account. So obviously, however, the last of the day, if that Evan actually has no money to pay back, the person that's going to be an Evan. Yeah, sorry, yeah, thank you. Reuven,
The alleged thief.
what's his name? Who's the milkman? Tubi? Hebi. Tevya. Yeah, Tevya. Yeah, I know. So it's only if the guy doesn't have money, and now you testify that he stole, and then you're found to be a false witness, so you do have money. He doesn't have money, but you do have money. Thank you. The alleged thief. Well said. Real government official. Yeah. So the alleged thief. So, however, even though the alleged thief has no money, but you conspiring witnesses are billionaires, maybe you would still get sold into slavery. You could just buy your way out, right? but okay, that's what he thought to say. That was Rav Hamnuna. So B'leim Rulei, however he said, but you could tell the guy like this. They could say, the witnesses could say, I'an havelach, if we were in your shoes, mi have mizdamta, so we would never get sold. If we were in your shoes, we have money, so we would never get sold because we could pay back. So now that we are found to be conspiring witnesses, we also should not be sold. Ananami lomis davina. So therefore, we also shouldn't be sold. Meaning, the same way earlier, if you didn't do the act that gets you atonement, then you don't get what you tried to give. So to here, you can't get sold into slavery if you yourself. Yeah.
But they should so our punishment should be not lashes. Our punishment should be to pay the loss. So we said you stole $1,000, we should have to pay $1,000, not get lashes. That's
right.
Kasher Zamar.
Right.
Really, that's his punishment.
That's the punishment. Right. Good. Yeah, that's true. Right. They claim a guy stole, so just pay whatever you're claiming he stole.
Why should they get lashes? That's a question.
Right.
But I think when they said there's four categories, they mean they get lashes. These four categories.
Doesn't say. That's what I thought also. Yeah, that's what I thought also. Now there's halachas if you have to pay money and get lashes. You don't get both, right? Can go on lash. I don't know. Yeah. Ella or the change of the haki itmar. Either we're switching or we're just rephrasing Rav Hamnuna. Rather Rav Hamnuna, some Rav Hamnuna, let me remember like this. Hani mili heichad islay. When he, the alleged thief, heichad islay, oledidei, oledidu. When either him or them have money, and nobody, not the alleged thief, obviously, because he never got convicted, nor the conspiring witnesses are going to be sold into slavery. However, they for sure there's no being sold as an evidivri. Aval. However, when both the alleged thief and the conspiring witnesses, they both don't have money, in that case, now he thought to say that the witnesses, the conspiring witnesses, the Adam Zoman, should be sold. Now that's a good question. Why not just pay? It's even harder because it's a derivative. It's like not even what to testify against about.
Can't. They don't have enough.
They don't have enough. They can't pay now. So now what do you do? Good.
You said after the billionaire.
Well, in that case earlier, that's what we thought to say, but now we were rephrasing it. That when they so that answers your question. You're right. When they could pay. Now, do they pay or they get lashes or both? I don't know. But for sure they don't get sold.
Give them their choice.
But I'm saying there
Love
could
you,
be a
yes.
potential case where
So yeah, this would be the case that you would have thought that they should get sold as an Eved, as Eved Ivrim, as Avadim Ivrim. To that, Amalei Rava, no. The Nimkar Bignei Vaso Amar Rachmana Bignei Vaso below Bezalmo. You only get sold Bignei Vaso with your robbery and not with your conspiracy.
okay,
Yeah.
This is his difficulty on Rav Hamnuna. But Rav Hamnuna,
I mean, the Brisa said you don't get sold. So Rav Hamnuna thought to say that that's only talking about when both you and they have money. But maybe Rav Hamnuna said that in that case you will not get sold. To which Rav says to him, no. Amrulay, no. The Torah says that only in your thievery and not in your conspiracy. And therefore, the Brisa, when it says Einim Karim B'Avad Ivri, it's talking about always. No matter if they have money, they don't have money, you always will have to. You will not get sold, and you will get lashed.
Earlier we were talking about the Makkot, about whether it's